My name is Alexandra Pierce, but you can call me Alex. I'm 36 years old, and I always believed I was a devoted daughter. I dedicated my life to winning the approval of my mother, Eleanor, culminating in a meticulously planned 70th birthday dinner at her favorite steakhouse in Chicago. As she lifted her champagne flute for a toast, I held my breath, waiting for a word of thanks. Instead, she locked her gaze on me and said, "The best gift? For you to finally get out of my life." What she couldn't have known was how profoundly I would honor her wish. Before I explain how I vanished from my mother's world, please drop a comment to let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've ever had to sever ties with a toxic family member. I suppose to truly grasp why her words felt like a fatal blow that night, you need to understand our history. My earliest memories are a collage of my mother's disapproving stares and sharp-tongued critiques. Nothing I ever did met her standards. My childhood art projects were dismissed as sloppy. My report cards were never quite perfect. My outfits were perpetually out of style. While other mothers proudly displayed crayon masterpieces on their refrigerators, mine would methodically identify every imperfection before tossing them into the bin. "Stand up straight, Alexandra," she'd command in public, yanking my shoulders back with a force that stung. "Nobody finds a slouching girl attractive." Or, "Smile more." "No, not like that. You look foolish." These corrections weren't just advice. They were the constant critical soundtrack to my upbringing. My father was the complete opposite. Dad was my warmth, my encouragement, the one who was quick to praise even my smallest efforts. "That's my brilliant girl," he'd say, his eyes crinkling at the corners with genuine pride when I'd present him with a science fair ribbon or a short story I'd written. He was the essential buffer between my mother's icy criticism and my fragile sense of self. But when I was 12, that buffer was ripped away. Dad died from a sudden brain aneurysm. I was the one who found him, collapsed in the garden while my mother was at her weekly book club meeting. I can still recall the sound of my own screams, a neighbor desperately performing CPR, the strobing red and blue lights painting our house. And I remember my mother's very first words to me when we arrived at the hospital. "Why weren't you paying closer attention to him? You knew he had headaches." In that single sentence, my mother's narrative was set. I was somehow complicit in my own father's death. It was the genesis of a guilt she would carefully nurture in me for the next 2 decades. My teenage years morphed into a relentless marathon for her approval. I joined every possible club, maintained a flawless GPA, and rose to become the captain of the debate team and the editor of our school paper. But every achievement was met with a dismissive comparison. Sharon's daughter was just accepted to Yale, or Brenda's daughter has far more presence on stage during her piano recitals. Despite her constant discouragement, I secured a full scholarship to the University of Chicago. "You'll probably drop out within a semester," she remarked coolly as I showed her the acceptance letter. "College is much harder than you imagine." But I didn't drop out. I graduated summa cum laude, with a double major in finance and economics. Mom didn't come to my graduation. She claimed to have a sudden, debilitating migraine. My love life suffered the most from her calculated interference. At 22, I was dating a wonderful medical student named Michael, a man my friends adored. When I brought him home for dinner, my mother spent the entire evening subtly chipping away at my character. "Alexandra was always so terribly awkward around boys," she confided in him over dessert. "I'm genuinely surprised she managed to capture your interest." A week later, she called him privately, fabricating a story about my emotional instability and insisting I needed extensive therapy before I could handle a serious relationship. He ended things soon after. This exact pattern repeated with Mark at 25 and then with David at 28. Every single time, my mother would find a way to dismantle any happiness I found. "I'm just looking out for your best interests," she would claim innocently. "You have such poor judgment when it comes to men." Despite it all, I carved out a successful career for myself as a financial advisor. By 36, I was managing portfolios for high net worth clients and had been promoted to senior advisor at my firm. I bought a beautiful condo in Chicago's Lincoln Park and had built a stable, secure life. And through it all, I continued to support my mother. After Dad's death, she never worked again, living first on his life insurance and then his pension. When those funds began to thin, I stepped in. I paid her property taxes, covered her utilities, and bankrolled her extravagant lifestyle. Every Sunday, I would make the drive to her house in Oak Park, where I'd listen to her complain about her neighbors, her friends, and most frequently, about me. This year, for her 70th birthday, I decided to plan something extraordinary. I booked a private room at Gibson's, her absolute favorite steakhouse. I invited her closest friends, hired a professional photographer, and ordered a custom cake from a bakery she had mentioned liking years ago. For months, I had been working secretly with a master jeweler to restore my grandmother's emerald necklace, a magnificent family heirloom. My grandmother had left it to me, but my mother had always coveted it. I decided it was finally time to give it to her, clinging to the desperate hope that this grand gesture would finally melt her cold heart and earn me her love. This birthday will be the one, I told my therapist the week before. I think she'll finally see how much I do for her. My therapist offered a look of deep concern, but remained silent. A part of me, the rational part, knew I was just setting myself up for another fall. But hope, as they say, is a stubborn, foolish thing. The evening of my mother's birthday, everything at Gibson's was flawless. The private room was aglow with candlelight, glinting off polished crystal and fine silverware. The tables were adorned with centerpieces of white orchids and gardenias, her favorite flowers. The chef had prepared her preferred appetizers, and the bartender had extra bottles of the specific Merlot she loved. I had arrived an hour early, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm of anticipation and dread, making sure every detail was perfect. I straightened place cards. I adjusted the lighting. The restaurant manager, seeing my anxiety, patted my shoulder. "Your mother must be a very special woman," he said with a warm smile. "She is," I replied on autopilot, even as my stomach twisted into a tight knot. At 7 o'clock sharp, the guests began to trickle in. My mother's friends greeted me with affection, many of them remarking on how wonderful it was for me to have arranged such a beautiful evening. "Your mother is so fortunate to have you," said Beatrice, her oldest friend. I managed a polite smile, wondering if my mother had ever, even once, shared that sentiment. At 7:15, my mother made her entrance. She wore an elegant silk dress I'd bought for her last Christmas, her silver hair styled perfectly. I moved in for a hug, but she deftly turned, offering only her cheek for an air kiss. "The valet took an eternity," were her first words. "And this room is awfully dim. How is anyone supposed to read the menu? I can ask them to turn up the lights," I offered, my voice already strained. She waved a dismissive hand. "Never mind, it's fine. Who chose these flowers? Orchids give me a headache." They had been her favorite for my entire life. I had memories of her planting them in our garden every spring. But I said nothing. I just signaled the waiter to bring her a glass of wine. The dinner progressed with my mother holding court, regaling her friends with stories. She barely looked in my direction, except to instruct me to tell the waiter her steak was overcooked, though I could clearly see it was a perfect medium rare, just as she'd requested. After the main course, just before dessert, I stood up to present her with her gift. The small, dark green velvet box felt incredibly heavy in my trembling hands as I walked over to her chair. "Mom," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "I wanted to give you something very special for your 70th birthday." I handed her the box. This was Grandma's necklace. I had it professionally restored, and the clasp was replaced with white gold. The table went quiet as she opened the box. The deep green emeralds shimmered in the candlelight, a truly breathtaking sight. I had spent a small fortune having it restored by one of Chicago's finest jewelers. My mother stared at it for a long, silent moment, then closed the box with a decisive snap. "Your grandmother should have left this to me to begin with," she stated, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "She always did favor you inappropriately." An uncomfortable silence descended upon the table. Beatrice, sitting next to my mother, gently touched her arm. "Eleanor, it's a magnificent gift." My mother simply placed the box on the table without another glance. My face burned with a familiar, deep humiliation as I walked back to my seat. When the cake arrived, its candles glowing, everyone sang "Happy Birthday." My mother posed for the photographer, then stood to make a toast. "Thank you all for joining me tonight," she began, her voice resonating through the now silent room. "It's so lovely to be surrounded by true friends on my birthday." She made a point of not looking at me. "As I get older," she continued, "I find I value authenticity more than anything else." She raised her glass higher, and then finally her eyes found mine. What happened next is seared into my memory in slow, excruciating detail. "If I were to wish for one gift this year," she went on, her gaze as cold as ice, "the very best gift would be for certain people to just leave my life. No more pretending, no more obligation, just freedom. Freedom from relationships that were never meant to be." The air in the room became thick and still. Her friends fidgeted, some staring down at their plates, others exchanging nervous glances. There was absolutely no mistaking her intent. "To another year," she concluded, taking a delicate sip of her wine as if she hadn't just publicly disemboweled her only child. I sat there, paralyzed, unable to speak or even breathe. The birthday cake sat untouched between us as the photographer, sensing the mood, quietly packed his equipment and slipped out of the room. For the rest of the evening, my mother chatted with her friends as if nothing had happened. I went through the motions of a hostess, my body on autopilot while my mind played her words on a torturous loop. The drive to take her home was thick with silence. When we pulled up to her house, she gathered her belongings, including the untouched box containing the necklace. "Dinner was adequate," she said as she opened the car door. "Next time, pick a better restaurant. Gibson's has really gone downhill. I couldn't stop myself." "Did you mean what you said about wanting me out of your life?" She paused, one foot out of the car. "Alexandra, don't be so dramatic. I was making a general statement about life. It didn't feel general, Mom. It felt intensely specific." She let out an exasperated sigh. "If you choose to internalize everything, that's your issue. But yes, our relationship has always been a burden. I did my duty raising you. I am under no obligation to pretend we have some deep, special bond now that you're grown. I pay your bills," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I maintain this house. I take you to every single doctor's appointment. And you never let me forget it, do you?" she snapped back. "You think your financial support buys you a permanent place in my life? That's your father in you, always keeping score." She slammed the car door shut and walked toward her front door without a single glance back. I sat in her driveway for what felt like an eternity, tears streaming down my face before I could compose myself enough to drive home. That night, lying in my bed, a brutal truth finally crystallized in my mind. Nothing was ever going to change. No gift, no accomplishment, no sacrifice on my part would ever be enough to make my mother love me. For 36 years, I had been running on a hamster wheel, exhausting myself in a race for an impossible prize. As the sun began to rise, I made a decision that would fundamentally alter both of our lives forever. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, furiously making lists, my mind suddenly clear and focused. By the time the sun's first rays hit my window, I had a comprehensive strategy for honoring my mother's wish. I would disappear from her life, not just emotionally, but in every practical and financial sense. First, I called my office and left a message for my boss, explaining I needed to take an emergency personal leave for 2 weeks. I had months of unused vacation time saved up, always too consumed with my mother's needs to ever take a real break. Next, I contacted David Chen, a realtor I'd worked with on his investment properties. "I need to sell my condo, David, and I need it done quickly and quietly," I told him when he called me back. "No public listings, no open houses. I want a private cash buyer, even if it means taking a hit on the price." "Alex, are you in some kind of trouble?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "No trouble," I assured him. "Just making some necessary life changes." By noon, I was sitting in the office of my financial advisor, Marcus Thorne. I laid out a detailed list of all my accounts and assets. "I need to completely detangle my finances from my mother's," I explained. "Every shared account, every automatic payment, every last financial tie." Marcus looked over the documents with his usual professional focus. "This is extensive," he remarked. "You're currently covering her property taxes, all utilities, credit card minimums, car insurance, and all of her medical co-pays." "Yes," I said, "and I want it all to stop, immediately." "May I ask why, Alex?" "This is very sudden. It's time for us both to live independently," I stated, leaving no room for argument. We spent the next 3 hours methodically restructuring my entire financial world. I froze the joint checking account I used to deposit money for her expenses. I canceled every single automatic payment. I had my name removed as an authorized user on all her credit cards. And most importantly, I changed the beneficiary on my life insurance policy and all my retirement accounts from her to a charity. "What about the mortgage on her house?" Marcus asked. "You've been making those payments for the last 5 years." "Stop those too," I said firmly. "The house is in her name. The debt is her responsibility." From his office, I went directly to the post office and had all my mail forwarded to a new P.O. box. I spent the afternoon on the phone, calling every service provider we shared, the home security company, the lawn care service, her cable provider, and methodically removed my name and payment information from each account. As a financial advisor, I was meticulous. I left no stone unturned, no loose end that could pull me back into her gravitational field. Back at my condo, I began to pack. I took only what was truly essential: clothes, my important documents, a small box of irreplaceable photos of my father, and a few sentimental keepsakes. I decided everything else, the expensive furniture, the artwork I never really liked, the formal dining set I'd never used, could be sold with the condo or donated. As I packed, I had a startling realization. I didn't care about any of these things. So much of my life had been curated to impress my mother, to fit her vision of what a successful daughter's life should look like. It wasn't my life at all. That evening, I wrote my mother a letter. It took 7 drafts before I had a version that was free of anger or accusation, just a statement of fact. "Mom," it read, "you said the best gift would be for me to leave your life. So I am giving you that gift. By the time you read this, I will be gone. The financial support I have provided over the years has now ended. The house, the bills, and all other expenses are now solely your responsibility. This is not an act of anger, but one of acceptance. You were right. Our relationship has been based on obligation, not love. I am now releasing us both from that obligation. Do not try to find me. I do not wish to be found. Alexandra." I sealed the letter and drove to her house late that night. I slipped it under her front door and walked away, this time without looking back. That night, I checked into a downtown hotel under a different name and paid in cash. As I sat on the generic, stiff bed, a bizarre cocktail of emotions washed over me. Searing grief mixed with a profound, intoxicating relief. For the first time in my adult life, I was not responsible for my mother's happiness, her comfort, or her financial stability. The weight that lifted off my shoulders was so immense, so palpable, that I actually gasped for air in the silent room. Over the next week, my plan unfolded with the mechanical precision I had designed. David, the realtor, found a cash buyer for my condo who was willing to close in 5 days, accepting a price 15% below market for the speed and privacy. I opened new bank accounts at a completely different bank and transferred my assets. I scrubbed my existence from social media, deactivating every account. I got a new phone and a new number. I packed what little I had kept into my car and started driving west, with no destination in mind. Each mile I drove was a physical severing, putting more and more distance between the old life and whatever was to come next. I stopped checking my old email. I ignored calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I cut every single tether to my former self. The first week of my new freedom was deeply disorienting. I'd instinctively reach for my phone to check on my mother, a habit ingrained over 2 decades. I would find myself mentally planning my Sunday visit to her house before remembering it would never happen again. At times, a tidal wave of guilt would crash over me, leaving me gasping with self-doubt. Was I a monster? But underneath the layers of grief and guilt, a new current was beginning to flow, something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. For the first time, my choices affected only me. My time was mine. My resources, which were substantial after years of hard work, were mine to command. I had vanished from my mother's life. What I didn't anticipate was how completely I would vanish from my own former life, too. The Alexandra who had existed in Chicago, the dutiful, people-pleasing woman, was gone, and I had no idea who was going to take her place. 1 week after I disappeared, my mother began her attempts to contact me. At first, the voicemails on my disconnected number and the emails to my old, abandoned account were dripping with irritation, not concern. Alexandra, the lawn service informed me you canceled their contract. Call me at once. The power company is claiming the automatic payment was rejected. You need to fix this today. My prescriptions need to be refilled. Where are you? She never once mentioned my letter. In her mind, I was still the person responsible for managing her life, regardless of what I had explicitly told her. 10 days after I left, my former assistant, Sarah, emailed my new private address, which I had shared only with her and my therapist. Your mother came to the office today, she wrote. She was extremely agitated, demanding to know your whereabouts. Security had to escort her out after she began yelling. I thanked Sarah for the information but offered no explanation. That same day, Beatrice, my mother's friend, called my therapist's office, fishing for information. Bound by confidentiality, my therapist, Dr. Evans, revealed nothing. But she relayed the message during our next phone session. Your mother appears to be escalating, doctor, Evans said carefully. Beatrice said she's been calling everyone you know, growing more and more frantic. 2 weeks in, my mother discovered that the mortgage payment was overdue. This, according to Beatrice's messages to Dr. Evans, is what sent her into a genuine panic. She hadn't personally made a mortgage payment in over 5 years and had apparently forgotten how. Social media became her next weapon. Even though I had deleted my accounts, friends sent me screenshots of her increasingly dramatic posts. My daughter has abandoned me without a word, she wrote. After all I sacrificed for her, she has left her elderly mother completely destitute. Please, if anyone knows where she is, help me find her. The comment section filled with sympathy from strangers who only knew her side of the story. A few mutual acquaintances who knew our dynamic expressed skepticism, but were quickly shouted down by her army of supporters. 3 weeks after my departure, my mother received a notice that her joint bank account with me had been frozen. According to Beatrice, who continued to be a reluctant conduit of information, this was the moment reality finally started to crash down. She went to the bank and caused a terrible scene, Beatrice reported to my therapist. They explained the account was frozen and she would need to open a new one with her own funds. She just kept repeating, I don't have any funds. Alexandra handles all of that. My mother had never bothered to understand her own finances. She had a modest pension from my father's old job and her Social Security income, but she had always relied on my substantial contributions to maintain her comfortable lifestyle. Without them, she was facing a very harsh new world. A month into my absence, the first credit card statements with past due, stamped in red, arrived. All 6 of her cards were maxed out, a result of years of her making only minimum payments with my money. She was now facing over $40,000 in consumer debt, with absolutely no way to pay it. When David Chen finally placed a sold sign on the lawn of my condo, my mother drove there in a panic, only to be met by the new owners moving in their furniture. They, of course, had no information to give her. 5 weeks after I left, she missed her second mortgage payment and received the first formal warning from the bank. This, combined with the mountain of credit card debt, triggered her first health crisis. Beatrice found her collapsed on her kitchen floor, hyperventilating from a severe anxiety attack. At the hospital, doctors found her blood pressure was dangerously high and prescribed medication for both anxiety and hypertension. "She kept asking for you," Beatrice told Dr. Evans. "It was the first time I heard her sound worried about you, not just about what you could do for her." After 6 weeks, my mother left the first voicemail that wasn't a demand or an accusation. Her voice was thin, fragile. "Alexandra, I don't understand why you've done this. I need you to come home. I miss you." The last 2 words sounded forced, as if she were speaking a foreign language she had never practiced. 2 months after I left, the foreclosure notices began. Her house, worth nearly $1 million in the Oak Park market, had significant equity, but she had no clue how to access it or manage a sale. Beatrice, despite being in her 80s herself, stepped in and helped my mother find a financial advisor. The advisor laid out her situation in stark, unforgiving terms: sell the house, pay off the debt, and find somewhere affordable to live, or face bankruptcy and foreclosure. "Your mother finally broke down," Beatrice reported. "She admitted she drove you away. She even showed me the letter you left." It was the first time in the 40 years I've known her that I've seen her take real responsibility for anything. 3 months after my disappearance, my mother wrote me a letter. Beatrice forwarded it to Dr. Evans, who called to ask if I wanted to read it. I was hesitant, but my curiosity won. The letter was unlike anything I had ever received from her. Her normally perfect cursive was shaky. The paper was creased, as if it had been crumpled and smoothed out more than once. "Alexandra," it began, "I have spent these last months furious with you for abandoning me. But yesterday, I found an old photo album in the attic. Pictures of you as a child I had completely forgotten. Looking at your face in those photos, I saw something I never allowed myself to see before. How much you were hurting, even as a little girl, because of me. I was not a good mother to you. I was jealous of your bond with your father. After he died, I blamed you, because blaming myself was too painful." After the dinner that changed everything, Beatrice sent one final message. Eleanor celebrated her birthday quietly at home. She bought a small cake for herself from the local bakery. She told Beatrice it was the first birthday where she truly understood what she had lost. Not the financial support or the practical assistance, but you, just you. While my mother was grappling with her new reality, I was busy building my own. After 2 weeks of aimless driving, I found myself drawn to Portland, Oregon. It felt as far from Chicago, both geographically and culturally, as I could get. The persistent rain and gray skies of my first few months there mirrored my internal state, but the breathtaking green of the Pacific Northwest slowly began to heal something deep inside me. I found a modest apartment in the Northwest District with a view of Forest Park. Unlike my polished Chicago condo, I furnished this space entirely for myself. Simple, comfortable pieces in blues and greens that reminded me of nature. There was no formal dining room, no guest room designed to impress visitors, just spaces that felt like home to me. With my credentials and experience, I secured a position at a boutique financial firm that specialized in ethical and sustainable investments. The company was smaller, the clients less affluent than in Chicago, but the culture was a revelation. It emphasized work-life balance and genuine client service over prestige and profits. We value advisors who care about their clients as people, not just as portfolios, the managing partner told me in my interview. I almost started crying right there, struck by the simple humanity of that statement. Finding a new therapist was my next priority. Dr. Anya Sharma specialized in complex trauma and toxic family systems. Unlike Dr. Evans in Chicago, who had always gently nudged me toward reconciliation, Dr. Sharma validated my decision from our very first session. Estrangement is a valid and sometimes the healthiest possible outcome, she told me. Not every relationship can be or should be salvaged. Hearing those words felt like being granted permission to finally let go of the guilt, to stop second-guessing the one decision that had allowed me to breathe freely. Making new friends was harder. In Chicago, my social life had been woven into the fabric of my mother's world or my high-pressure job. In Portland, I had to learn to build connections from scratch, based on nothing more than shared interests. I joined a hiking club that explored the Columbia River Gorge on weekends. I joined a book club. I volunteered at a community garden. Slowly, tentatively, I built a circle of friends who knew nothing of my past, who liked me for the person I was now, not for what I could provide. These relationships, unburdened by history or obligation, were my first real taste of what healthy connection felt like. The first holiday season was brutal. Thanksgiving brought a tidal wave of grief so intense I spent the entire day in bed, looking at old photos of my father and crying for the family I never truly had. But New Year's Eve was a turning point. My new friend Chloe invited me to a small get-together at her house, and there I met Liam. He was a high school English teacher with kind eyes and a dry, quiet wit. We talked for hours about everything from classic literature to the best hiking trails around Mount Hood. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for a moment. Old fears of letting someone new get close enough to be driven away. But I gave it to him anyway, a small act of courage that felt monumental. Our first few dates were refreshingly normal. There was no pressure to perform, no underlying calculation of what my mother might think of him. We just enjoyed each other's company. Meeting Liam's family was an education. His parents disagreed without contempt. They expressed affection without strings attached, and they showed genuine interest in his life without trying to control it. The first time his mother gave me a hug goodbye, I went stiff with surprise before awkwardly returning it. "Your family is so normal," I told Liam later. "It's kind of incredible." He laughed. "They have their quirks, but yeah, they're pretty great." 6 months into my new life, I had a major breakthrough in therapy. Dr. Sharma had me write a letter to my younger self. "Dear little Alex," I wrote, "it was never your job to make your mother happy. Her unhappiness was a thing that lived inside of her long before you were born. You didn't cause it, and you could never have fixed it. You were a good girl. You were worthy of love, exactly as you were." Reading those words aloud in Dr. Sharma's office, I sobbed, a deep cleansing cry. For the first time, I think I truly believed them. That same week, I received the letter from my mother, forwarded by my therapist. Reading her words, I felt a confusing swirl of emotions, validation that my pain had been real, sorrow for the relationship we never had, and a tiny, fragile seed of hope that maybe, just maybe, people could change. I didn't respond. Instead, I took the letter to therapy, and we spent several sessions unpacking what it meant and how, if at all, I wanted to proceed. "There's no rush, doctor," Sharma assured me. "You take all the time you need to decide what's right for you." The 1-year anniversary of my departure from Chicago approached. I received another update from Beatrice via my therapist. My mother had sold the house, paid off all her debts, and moved into a senior living apartment. She was taking art classes. The photo Beatrice attached showed my mother looking older, yes, but also softer. She was holding up a watercolor painting, a tentative smile on her face. Looking at that photo, I made a decision I never thought I would. I would go back to Chicago, not to stay, not to rescue her, but to see for myself who my mother had become in my absence. After a year of carefully constructing my new life in Portland, I flew back to Chicago with a knot of dread and curiosity in my stomach. Liam offered to come, but I knew this was a journey I had to make alone. I didn't tell my mother I was coming. I wasn't ready for a planned reunion with all its heavy expectations. Instead, I checked into a hotel and spent the first day just walking the city. Chicago felt both intensely familiar and strangely alien, like a half-remembered dream. I walked through Lincoln Park, past my old office, past my former condo. These places, once the cornerstones of my existence, now felt like they belonged to someone else's life. On the second day, I went to see Beatrice. At 82, she was as sharp as ever. "Your mother has changed, Alexandra," she told me over tea in her Gold Coast apartment. Not a complete transformation, mind you. She still has her moments. But there's a humility there now I never thought I'd live to see. "Do you think I should see her?" I asked. Beatrice looked at me for a long moment. "Only you can decide that, dear, but I'll tell you this. The woman who told you to get out of her life is not entirely the same woman living in that senior apartment today." I hadn't intended to see my mother that day, but as I left Beatrice's building, I found my rental car driving toward Oak Park on instinct. Her new address was a modest complex for seniors, a world away from the grand colonial she had occupied for decades. I parked across the street, planning only to see the building and then leave, but as I sat there, I saw her. She was walking toward the entrance carrying a small bag of groceries. She moved more slowly, her posture less rigid, and without making a conscious decision, I got out of the car. We almost ran into each other at the coffee shop next to her building. I had gone in to get a coffee and steady my nerves, and she was in line right in front of me. She didn't recognize me at first. My hair was shorter, my clothes more casual, my entire expression more relaxed. It was only when the barista called out Alex for my order that she turned, her eyes widening in disbelief. "Alexandra!" Her voice was a faint whisper. "Hello, Mom." We stood there, frozen, as the coffee shop buzzed around us. Finally, she spoke again. Are you all right?" The question, so simple and so full of genuine concern, caught me off guard. "I am," I said. "Are you?" She nodded, her eyes never leaving my face. Would you sit with me for just a minute?" I hesitated, then gestured to a small table. We sat in a profound awkwardness, two strangers who shared a lifetime of history. "I didn't know you were in Chicago," she said. "I only told Beatrice." She nodded, accepting this. "You look well. Different, but well." "So do you," I replied, and I meant it. The harsh lines of constant disapproval around her eyes had softened. After a few minutes of stilted small talk, I suggested we walk to the park across the street. Neutral ground. We sat on a bench, leaving a careful distance between us. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then my mother did something I had never seen her do in my entire life. She began to cry. Not the manipulative, attention-seeking tears of the past, but silent, dignified tears that she tried to discreetly wipe away. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I never thought I'd see you again." "I never planned on coming back," I admitted. She nodded. "I understand why. I've had a lot of time to think. Beatrice mentioned you joined a support group." "Yes, for estranged parents." At first, she gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "I went there to learn strategies to get you back, but all I learned was why you left. The other parents, they told stories of their ungrateful children. But as they talked, I heard the patterns, the control, the criticism, the emotional manipulation. I recognized myself in their stories, and it was horrifying. I listened, not daring to speak. My therapist, she continued, taking a shaky breath, helped me understand something I never wanted to see. I treated you the way my mother treated me. This was news to me. My grandmother had always been painted as a saint in our family lore. My mother was cruel, she said, her voice catching. Nothing I ever did was right. She told me I was the disappointment of her life. Sound familiar? A chill ran through me. You never told me. I was ashamed. As if her cruelty was somehow my fault. When you were born, I swore I would be different, but I didn't know how. I had no blueprint for being a good mother. That explains some things, I said carefully, but it doesn't excuse them. No, she agreed instantly. It doesn't. Nothing excuses how I treated you, especially after your father died. I was jealous of him. He knew how to love you in a way I didn't know how, and I blamed you for his death because I couldn't bear to blame myself for not being there. The honesty was staggering. It was all wrong, Alexandra. All of it. We sat in silence. I have something for you, she said finally, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a worn, leather-bound journal. I've been writing in this since you left. My therapist suggested it. It's all there. My childhood, my marriage, my failures as your mother. You don't have to read it, but if you ever want to understand, it's there. I took the journal. Thank you. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, she said. I'm not even asking to be in your life. I just wanted you to know that I understand now why you had to leave, and that I'm so sorry I made it necessary. As we parted, there was no tearful hug. Instead, there was something far more valuable. Truth. I live in Portland now, I told her. I have a good life. She smiled, a real smile. I'm glad. That's all I should have ever wanted for you. I can't promise anything, I said, but if you'd like, we could exchange emails, just to see. Her eyes brightened. I would like that very much. On the plane back to Portland, I held the journal but didn't open it. I would share it with Dr. Sharma first. Liam met me at the airport, his calm presence a welcome anchor. How did it go? He asked. Honestly, I replied, nothing like I expected, and maybe, just maybe, better than I feared. 2 years have passed since I vanished from Chicago. My life now is defined by peace, not anxiety, by connection, not obligation. I was made a partner at my firm last year, specializing in helping women achieve financial independence. The work feels deeply meaningful. Liam proposed 6 months ago on a trail overlooking the mountains. I said yes with a confidence I'd never known. My relationship with my mother has evolved. Our emails became occasional phone calls. Last Christmas, she visited Portland. It was surreal watching her interact with Liam's family. She was quieter, more observant. When Liam's niece showed her a messy drawing, my mother just admired it. Your mother is not what I expected from your stories, Liam said later. She's not the same person, I replied, and neither am I. We're planning a small wedding for the spring. When I asked if she wanted to come, she said, I would be honored, but I'll understand if you change your mind. This day should be perfect for you. That consideration, that selflessness was proof of how far she'd come. We will never have that classic close mother-daughter bond. The scars are too deep. But we have something else, something hard-won, an honest relationship between two adults who see each other clearly. Looking back, I know my disappearance was necessary, not just for my healing, but for hers. By removing myself from the equation, I forced her to finally look at herself. My story isn't simple. Some will call my actions cruel. Others might question why I ever reestablished contact. But healing is rarely a straight line. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is walk away. And sometimes, the family you choose teaches you how to heal from the one you were born into. At her most recent birthday, a quiet dinner at a small Italian place near her apartment, she raised her glass. It was a very different toast from the one that had shattered my world. To second chances, she said, looking right at me. and for the first time, I raised my glass and drank to that.